Hello everyone. Um, so before we get into chapter 3, part 1, those slides, chapter 3, part 1 slides, are in Canvas if you're in my Canvas online course. They're also in Dropbox if you're joining me from YouTube, if you want to take a look at those. Make sure to go to the About section on the page and you'll see, on the YouTube page, and you'll see that Dropbox link. And so here I talk about the properties of waves, but when we get into chapter 3, we're going to talk about something called the duality of light and the way it behaves like both a wave and a particle. And so before we talk about how light behaves in those two ways, it's important to understand what waves are first, and just some basic properties of waves. And that's what this short introductory video is going to be about. And so, again, I'm learning how to use this new system because I don't have an iPad. I have this Wacom tablet, which is a little bit more challenging to use, but I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm going to draw something called the resting point, the resting position. This position is kind of considered like a 0 point. So this is the resting point. Also considered 0. And so then I'm going to draw my wave. And I'm going to go up and down and back up again. Alright, and assuming that this repeats itself at regular intervals, this is called a periodic wave. So this whole thing, and change colors, is referred to as a periodic wave because it happens at regular intervals. Waves that occur at regular intervals. Alright, and so now that I've drawn this wave, we can ask some basic questions about this wave that'll help us get some more information. And so we can ask ourselves, how long does it take to go up, down, and back up again? And I'll draw that again so you can understand what I'm talking about. So drawing my resting point again, like the beautiful artist I am. How long does it take to go up, down, and back up again? That whole idea, going up, down, and back up again, we call that a cycle. So if we reword the question, what we're really asking is, how many seconds does one cycle take? And that terminology is referred to as a period. So we could say 1 period is equal to 10 seconds. Okay? And so now we can ask a sort of inverse or opposite to that question. We can ask how many cycles let me use a different color. We can ask, how many cycles are in 1 second? And so if one period takes 10 seconds, if there's one cycle, I should say, takes 10 seconds, that's referred to as a period. If I talk about how many cycles are in 1 second, there is 1/10 of a cycle in 1 second, because it's just the inverse. This is just the inverse of this, and so the inverse meaning that we put a 1 over it. And that kind of you might be scratching your head a little bit and being like, what? What does this mean? Well, it's kind of like the difference between asking. It's like asking. These two questions, it's like asking. Like this. It's like asking how many inches are in a foot, right? That's a question we can all relate to. Well, the answer is simple to that. It's like there's 12 inches in 1 foot, right? Now, if we ask the inverse of that, we'll be saying how many feet are in 1 inch. Well, we scratch our head a little bit, maybe, but we know from unit conversions, right? There is 1/12 of a foot in 1 inch. So this is just the inverse of that, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. This terminology is known as the frequency. This is frequency. All right. And so far we've gone over what a periodic wave is. We've gone over what a cycle is. We've gone over what a period is. And we've gone over frequency. These are just inverses of each other, and if you're kind of scratching your head and it doesn't seem to quite click yet, you could try to use this to make this idea to make it a little bit more intuitive. And the more you work with it, the more familiar the idea will come to you. And so there's just a few more pieces of terminology I want to point out. And I don't quite have enough room on that last slide, so I'm going to draw my stuff again. Oh, also, we went over, I almost forgot, the resting point. That's something else we went over. Alright, that's 0 point. So I'm going to draw that again. Oh, not with the highlighter though. Right. So I'm going to draw that again. And remember, going up, down, and back up again was called what? That was called a cycle. So this was called a cycle. The wave itself was called a periodic wave because it occurs at regular intervals, right? This is the resting point. And now we're going to talk about, well, what does it mean when we're at the very top? This is called a peak. That's intuitive, right? Like the peak of a mountain is the top of the wave. Is the peak. And so we can ask another question. How far is it between peaks? That's supposed to be a cursive S. Sorry. That is called the wavelength. Okay, wavelength. That is our wavelength. And we can also ask, how far is it from the resting point to the peak? Remember, this was the resting point. From the resting point to the peak. To the peak of the wave. And that is referred to as our amplitude. That is amplitude. And in a different video, I'll talk about like what different frequencies mean, what different amplitudes mean in terms of energy and things like that. But for right now, I just want you to get familiar with these terminologies and ideas, so you can kind of wrap your mind around some of the patterns we'll talk about later. All right.